Okay, well, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How's
Yeah,
everything with
so
you?
so nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you also.
Thank you.
That's one great thing with the book. It's just allowed me to meet so many different, unbelievably interesting people.
Yep,
So,
exactly. Great connections
yeah,
for sure. So now that we have everything situated here, do you want to introduce the audience? Introduce yourself to the audience. I'm sorry.
sure, absolutely.
Okay.
My name is Annette Marinaccio. I am a CPA, certified public accountant, and I live in New York, sort of Long Island, which is about 45 minutes outside of New York City.
Hmm.
And I for my entire life have been like an accountant kind of person. That's sort of my career. And even when I was younger, I just, love numbers. I still love numbers. So that's sort of my background and my discipline.
Hmm.
And I'm sort of, I would say, very entrenched in the traditional 2D world. I'm a healthcare executive for a large organization on Long Island, which is where I live, and I love it. So that's sort of what I'm about. I am a wife and a mother. I have two adult children, a girl and a boy, and so I have just I would say a regular, ordinary, sort of great life. And yeah, so that's sort of, what I'm about
Yep.
outside of this most recent change, which is now I'm an author of a book about the afterlife.
Love it. So I found you on We Don't Die podcast, and I immediately just looked you up. I was like, this is astonishing. I have also tapped into it. I messaged you and said that I had a soulmate recently pass away, but that kind of shot me into this direction. But before, I kind of was interested. I just didn't really understand it. But I mean, there comes a point in your life where you are forced onto the path. So, can you talk about how and when this started to happen?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say that when I was, very young, growing up, early teens, I was interested in sort of like the afterlife and astrology and things like that. But I was more interested in numbers. So I didn't really pursue anything having to do with anything spiritual. And then I just got, very busy with my normal life, marriage, kids, working, so just, again, not really focused on spirituality. And people would say, well, were you skeptical before your eyes were open to this? And I would not say I was skeptical. I just really had not thought about it that much. And I really thought when you die, and that was it, and was unconsolable when my grandparents died, knowing, oh my goodness, I'd never see them again. And so that's sort of what I thought life was about. And then my mother-in-law died in 2006. What actually happened is my mother and mother-in-law
Mm-hmm.
both were diagnosed with cancer within a
Okay.
week of each other, just a matter of days
Wow.
in
Yeah.
2005. So my family got tossed into just like a crash course on chemotherapy and surgeries and medications and radiation therapy and stage 2, stage 1, stage 4. So it was really a very rough time.
Right.
And my mother had breast cancer, and she is still here. She is turning 90 next month. So
Wow.
she fought about 4 cancers in 5 years
Wow.
back in her mid 70s. So
Wow.
yeah, but my mother-in-law had pancreatic cancer, which is such a deadly cancer. So in the year that my mother was fighting with her breast cancer, it was very aggressive breast cancer. My mother-in-law was also fighting, but my mother-in-law was losing the battle
Mm-hmm.
because pancreatic just there's no coming back from it. Hardly. There's just shows no mercy. So in 2006, my mother-in-law died.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And it was, horrible because she was such a close part of our family, and she was a wonderful grandmother to my children. And It was very tough for my husband. We come from a small, close-knit family. And so it was just very difficult for all of us. And about 5 days after my mother-in-law died, my daughter, who was 13 at the time, and I were sitting at the kitchen table before I head to work and she heads to school. And she said in a very matter-of-fact way, and we had not really discussed afterlife or anything like that in my household. So she said, "Oh, guess what? Grandma Lucille," that was my mother-in-law's name, gave me a gift yesterday. And I'm thinking, well, that's not possible, but okay. So I'm thinking to myself, geez, she's obviously having a very tough time with this death and whatnot. And so, but I said, what kind of a gift? And she said, she gave me pom-poms. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she proceeded to tell me that she was in art class the day before, and they were making textured cards. And she decided to go to the closet to get the bin of pom-poms, and she decided to make a red and green pom-pom card. So she took out 11, I don't know why 11, but 11 green and 11 red pom-poms, and she triple checked that she had them before she brought the bin back, and then she brought the bin back, and when she came back to the table, there were her 11 green, her 11 red, and 1 lavender and 1 ivory, the exact color of the balloons that we let go at my mother-in-law's gravesite 5 days earlier. And I was like, I just listened, and she said, "Do you want to see them?" And I was like, okay. She just ran upstairs. Sure enough, she got 2 pom-poms, the lavender, same colors. And I was like, well, how did they get there? And it was interesting to me, her response, because I feel like, in my heart of hearts, if she were really coping with something, I might have been able to detect it at that point. And she was so innocent, like, I wish I could have seen it. I don't know if they floated through the air. I don't know if they just appeared there. Like, I could see she was going through all the practical possibilities in her head and arriving at, it was an impossible situation. And so I said, well, was anybody else around the table? I was sort of like asking her a lot of questions. She's like, no, that's the whole thing. So I could see she had worked through the possibilities and came up with the only one she was comfortable with, which was they appeared as a gift, thanking her for the balloons. So I was just telling everybody that story because I was struggling myself, and I didn't know if maybe my daughter was dealing with something that I should be helping her through. I wasn't sure. But the second thing that happened was about, maybe 3 days after that, I was speaking with a girlfriend of mine who I'd been very friendly with for 10 years prior, and I'm still very friendly with her. And I guess we had never spoken about the afterlife. And I go through the whole pom-pom story with her. And she says to me at the end of my story, well, you believe in the afterlife, don't you? And I was like, what? And I couldn't believe that she was so matter-of-fact about it.
Yeah.
She just understood it. She knew it was there. And, every once in a while you find those kind of people. I'm one of those people now. And I was just like, what? So now I had my daughter telling me this innocent situation and my dear friend sort of validating that it was possible. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe it is possible. So that's sort of, I would say, in that week or so in October of 2006, that my eyes just started to get open to the fact that maybe it's not about here.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe there's way more than this.
Yes. So let's back up a little bit more. I listened to your book on Audible. It's amazing. I love it, by the way. So I already know this question, but for the audience, do you have a religious background, and how did that shift? Is there any confliction? This might be a really, deep and triggering question for other people. I'm also going through the same kind of shift and dynamic, but you weren't really interested in knowing all of this, but it kind of came to you naturally. So how does that interfere?
It's interesting that you asked that question because it's a very common question. I've done a couple of local book readings and things like that. And I would say more times than not, someone will ask that question.
Yeah.
And I was raised Roman Catholic, and I was, I would say, pretty devout. I mean, I went to church all the time. And I actually liked the rhythm of church. I like going there, sort of that dedicated hour with your family, and having some downtime to just focus on something other than your regular life.
Mm-hmm.
So everything about my faith and my religion, I would say I enjoyed. All of this started happening to me in 2006, which was around the time that the Catholic religion was getting a really, a lot of bad things were coming out about Catholicism and priests and things like that. So I was getting a little bit, I would say, just upset about the hurt that the hierarchy of the church, in some places had caused people. That sort of affected everybody. But what I will say is, when I started learning, and now that I know a lot about spirituality and the other side, and just everything about how it interplays with religion, what I've learned is that there is no conflict between spirituality and any religion, my religion or anybody's religion.
Mm-hmm.
They really do go hand in hand, and there are parts of every religion in every other religion, and then there are some parts of departure too. But what I've learned, the way I've learned to reconcile it, is the way I reconcile everything in my life, and the way I think everybody does, but they don't always think of it this way. But what you do is you sort of take the two parts that that resonate with you. So what I learned about spirituality and what I knew about my Roman Catholicism, I take the parts where they intersect,
Mm-hmm.
and they both resonate, and I incorporate them.
Yep.
And where they don't intersect or they conflict, I have to get on with my day.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of just park it to the side in my brain or in my soul. I move forward.
Okay.
And people do this in everyday life all the time. You can't resolve every discrepancy that you encounter in your daily life, whether it has to do with your relationship or your work relationship or your family or your religion or spirituality. You can't reconcile everything. At some point, you have to take bits and pieces of things that don't fit together and just move them aside to carry on with your day. And we do that with grief. We do that with a lot of different things. You just have to sort of say, there's no way I can accept this, and there's no way I can make it fit, and there's no way I can incorporate this, and there's no way I can digest it. But I have the choice of getting swallowed into it, and probably, not really ever coming out the other end, like just going deeper into it. Or I can sort of move it aside for right now and move forward with my day and just compartmentalize it.
Yep.
And
Compartmentalize.
so that's sort of what I've done.
Yeah.
What I have learned about spirituality, and something that I believe that not a lot of people might, I guess, appreciate or believe or want to believe, is that there is certainly I'll say a supreme being, and everybody can call that supreme being whatever they want. They could say it's, God or Allah or whatever they want to call their supreme being. But what I've learned through a lot of my research is that I believe the supreme being is all of the souls of the universe, all of them,
Okay.
in their purest form together.
Wow. Oneness.
So
Unity.
it's collectiveness and oneness in one. And so it's all of us in our highest, purest energy form.
I have chills.
All as one. And so when people say God is something outside of us, of course it is. We're a microcosm of that. And when people say, but we're part of God, that's true. We are one microcosm of that supreme being. So I like to think of it, that way. That's just sort of what I believe.
Right. I love it. I love the perspective.
Yeah.
So another question to go off of that, I've listened to We Don't Die podcast. I listened to Evidence of the Afterlife. Were you on that, by the way?
I was not on
Okay.
Evidence of it. Yeah, no.
Okay, well, you should tune in and be on it one day too. I mean, you would fit in great. But they talk a lot about near-death experiences, and from my understanding, every NDE is so similar to where they meet the one source of being. And they have all of this natural wisdom and knowledge and insight, and there's no forcing anything. So that's kind of my belief too. I actually grew up Catholic as well, but I still am. I would just say I'm more open to the afterlife, because I mean, that's the end. That's where we're all going. And that's just, it's not a destination really. It's just it's a place where, you know, everyone is a collective unity. So it's interesting to think about, but a lot of people, you know, a lot of people don't understand it. And I think that it's so great that, you know, you're here and you have been put on this path for a reason, to show people and guide them through that. But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that, but I've been studying NDEs, and it's just every story seems to be very, very similar.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I thought of two things when you were speaking about that. The first is, I think near-death experiences are one of the most robust scientific types of situations that allow people to sort of know, you know, maybe there is something more, because there's just, you know, I found it as an accountant impossible, statistically impossible, for there to be decades of people who've experienced near-death experiences, all different walks of life, all different, you know, religions, all different national, and so many of them, not all of them, but hundreds, probably thousands, all have a similar story.
Yeah.
And it spans decades.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, I mean, do people really think it's possible that they're colluding, that these hundreds or thousands of different people are colluding on their on what they experience? It's statistically impossible for them all to have this occur. And I will say that after my another thing that I thought of when you were speaking, that after my mother-in-law died, and after she opened my eyes to the afterlife, which was a series of steps and synchronicities. You know, I'm an accountant, so it's not that I'm very left brain dominant. Left brain is that analytical side, not really the creative side. And I really needed to be walked through the fact that there was an afterlife. It's not like I accepted everything. I didn't accept things easily. I needed to understand this step. And I also needed to be, it was a slow evolution of my understanding. So it was probably about 3 years. And there were, you know, after my mother-in-law opened my eyes, a lot of my other deceased relatives and actually spirit guides, which I didn't really want to have to believe in spirit guides when I started this, but whatever, my spirit guides ended up really helping me to understand things. So that probably took about 3 years. I did a lot of research during that time, a lot. I just jumped into everything metaphysical that I could possibly get my head around. And then what I understood is that the afterlife is also the before life, and it's continuous.
Yeah.
So basically this earthly life is like this sliver of our soul's existence. And we come in, you know, reincarnation, which again, I did not want to have to believe that before I started this. But once I understood really what it's about, reincarnation is real. And so we sort of come back and forth from the other side to this side, to the other side to this side, into these like different dimensions to allow our souls to grow. And so when you hear about those near-death experiences like that, it just brings such a validation to the fact that we're way more than we think we are here.
Yeah, way more than just a human form. This human body is very temporary. Our soul it's just very ongoing. So, wow, it's amazing. I just don't even know what to say. I have a few questions for you, actually.
Sure.
So it's kind of in regards to reincarnation. Souls who've passed away, they're taking care of us on this earth. But I'm also kind of conflicted in the aspect, and are they also carrying on with their soul's journey? So when they come and visit us, like I have a lot of visitation dreams. And that's how I started my journey was long ago. I'm just going to back up quick. My sister's boyfriend passed away, and I only met him a few times. He came to me in a dream, very
Right.
vivid. He said,
Wow.
tell your sister it's okay to move on. Clear as day. He visited her the same night. And then I was like, this is really strong and powerful. I was maybe 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's what started me a little bit. I started more, researching during college, and I had my cousin pass away. He would visit me clear as day, talk to me,
Wow.
and then his brother passed away. So then I would have them two together in my dreams, very
Oh,
vivid. So
wow.
I have had a lot of, visitation dreams, but I want to kind of touch on, and this is more selfish of me to say, but my soulmate that I keep bringing up, he passed away in February. And I also had a few visitation dreams where he spoke to me and he said, Lexie, I'm always here. I never left you. That was his words. I have it written down.
So
It,
cool.
it gave me so much solace.
Yeah.
But my question to you and your perspective is, when they pass over into the realm, when they've served their purpose here, are they still contacting me to help me grieve? Are they contacting, are they involved in their family's life to help them grieve? What is their purpose in visiting us? And are they still continuing their soul's journey somewhere else? And how is
Yeah.
that possible?
Yeah. Yes. Well, first of all, when, we're energy, we're all energy, right? So
Yeah.
we're a little bit confined energy on this side because of our bodies and our minds. So we're a little bit more clunky with
Yeah.
respect to our being able to move around, I'll say. But on the other side, we're light. We're like light. So
Okay.
we can be in many places at once, many places.
Okay.
And so we can certainly be visiting, like you said, your soulmate or your sister's boyfriend visiting you and visiting your sister at the same time. Absolutely. It happens all the time, those kinds of things. And yes, they're still working on their own soul growth also. The interesting thing is, one of the things that people think about when people die is, oh, they're finally at peace, like it's a peaceful kind of a situation on the other side. And it is very happy and joyful and peaceful, but we still work on the other side, and it may not be the same kind of physical hard work that we have here. So people like to think of, well, I'm retired, I'm not working anymore, but you're always working.
Yeah.
So the thing that helps you grow on the other side helps your soul grow, because that's the whole purpose there and here is identical. It's growth.
Okay. Yeah.
Love and growth. That's it. Love and
Wow.
growth. So growing on the other side, though, happens with less painful experiences. So it's more like meditation, hearing music, introspection. It's more of that kind of growth. Whereas here, growth is a little bit, our souls are stretched a little bit further here because there's a lot of negativity that we have to encounter.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that we have to go through here with grief and burden really allow our soul to, I'll say, almost fast track growth more so than on the other side. So you're growing on the other side while you're visiting people, absolutely, and you're growing here, you're here also. But what you said, something that reminded me of something that I learned actually after I wrote the book, because a lot of people have come forward because of the book and have told me different wonderful stories like the ones you have. I mean, of course, I'm so sorry for your loss, but it is fascinating that you're this obvious conduit to the other side during your dreams, where your loved ones and friends of friends and friends of loved ones are able to find you, to give you one or two words to have you, feel a little bit more at peace with what has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe more importantly, they're using your conduit because you can spread a message.
Right.
So I learned something. A friend of mine had his son die, and after his son died in a dream, his son he had a platter of apples, and he was following his father. They were like both floating. It was a dream, and he's facing his father, and he's going, and every once in a while he tips the tray and an apple falls off. And his father, being fatherly, being paternal, feels like, oh, you dropped an apple, like it's a problem. And he looked at his father and he said, no, that's knowledge from this side. He pointed down, he was dropping it to earth.
Wow.
So the interesting thing is, what that made me think of was, I wonder if the other side shares information like my mother-in-law did, and like your soulmate has done, shares information with those of us who are more apt to share it with others.
Yes.
Because it's like a seed. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not just about us and our grief, which it does, of course, help. But it's the fact that you're in a position with a podcast and with your profession to sort of spread the word to others. And even if it's not specifically the word of the afterlife, it's the way you live your life that will help lift others. And that's really what happened with me with my book. I just felt this, like a responsibility. I'm not I don't even read that much, and I'm not a writer. So people are just like, I can't believe you wrote a book. And I was just like, listen, I can't either, And I mean, I really can't. But I felt it was very mission-based. I felt I had to. And so it's what's of interest to me. I have a girlfriend who said to me, geez, your mother-in-law must have been such a strong person after she read my book. And I was like, she was strong, but she wasn't like super, super strong. She was like anybody, I would think. And she said, well, you and she must have been so close. And I was like, well, we were very close. She was a wonderful woman. But I wouldn't say we were like super, super close. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then my girlfriend said, well, then why did she pick you to open your eyes to the afterlife? And I was like, I don't know. And then she thought about it, my girlfriend, and like about a couple minutes later, she goes, I know why. And I was like, why? And she said, because she knew you would write a book.
Wow. Yes.
And I was like, ooh, I think that's true. I think she figured that this, me, Annette, this woman is an accountant. She puts her mind to it. It's going to happen.
Yep.
And so now I sort of think, this was after I wrote the book, but I sort of think that that's true. I think they come through to us in ways that help us, but also in ways where we just automatically sort of help others.
Right.
And I was sort of fascinated by that,
Exactly.
And once you have your eyes open to it, you just can't help you. And so many people have these stories.
So many.
There's so many.
There's no such thing as a coincidence. There's nothing. I mean, you can't even ignore it. You can't say, oh, that was just, that was just a coincidence. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it.
I said there's people that'll say, if my deceased loved one comes through, then tomorrow's newspaper will be printed backwards. And they'll actually get the newspaper and it is printed backwards and they'll rationalize it out. They'll say, well, something, it was probably because the editor did something. And it's just like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't, like, to me as an accountant, you can't argue with that kind of, those kinds of circumstances.
Yeah.
So, but the answer to your initial question is absolutely. Because they are light, and light is so vast, mm-hmm. They are perfectly capable. We are perfectly capable of growing our soul on the other side while helping people here, while visiting people here, and visiting multiple people at once.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a very, it's the words amorphous kind of a physics. I'm not a science person, but physics is very interesting, but that's how light is. It's very vast.
Yeah.
And I had that situation with my father. My father's still alive. He's 92, but I would say maybe about a year ago, I had a dream or 2 years ago, my father was in the dream. I'm going to say he was 75 in the dream, about 75 years old, even though in real life he was like 90. Mm-hmm. And he was in his backyard, And it was right before I was starting to think about writing the book. So I think he wanted, which I included it in the book because I think it was a pertinent part of our soul. And I think that's why he was telling me that. And he opened the back gate of his backyard and he pointed out to the front of his yard. And I'm looking at him and he's wearing khaki pants and a striped kind of polo shirt. And he pointed and I looked at him. He was also in the front yard at the same time.
Wow.
And he was in his 50s. And he had a bright yellow shirt on with more tailored kind of pants. And I looked at him here and I looked at him there. And I was like, I don't understand. How are you doing that? And he just said, he was just sort of pointing like, yeah, you can be in many places at once.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I said, so you can be in more than one place and more than one age at the same time? And he was like, yes. And I was like, that's fascinating. So I know his soul, in real life, his soul was teaching me this at night.
Yes.
Even though we were both living souls. So
wow.
I was so fascinated by it. And that next day, I told my daughter about it. And my daughter almost started crying because she was like, something? I thought only deceased souls would visit you at night. And last night, Grandpa, it was in my dreams, and he kissed my hand.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, how old was he? She goes, he was 90. And so here was my father showing me he can be 50, he can be 75, and he can be 90 in my daughter's dream. So that was a very powerful part of my understanding about everything. So I knew it was meant to be in the book because I had just started thinking about putting things together. And that's a very important point, that our soul can be in multiple places, multiple years, at the same time visiting multiple people.
Wow. Do you know Dr. Joe Dispenza? Have you heard of him?
No, I don't.
Oh, he studies
really?
quantum. Yeah, he studies quantum physics.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know him, but so many people have said to me when I speak about things like this, oh, this is like the string theory or quantum physics. Yep. And I've tried to read up on that to understand it, but it's like out of my scope. Like it's hard for me to get my head around it, but it's about multiple dimensions and things like that. And a lot of people have said, when I speak about what I've learned from the soul perspective, they've brought up quantum physics and string theory.
Yes. Yeah. So Dr. Joe, he was during a meditation, he was sitting on his couch and he was starting to get more conscious, but he was also in a very meditative state, and he kind of quantum jumped, if you will.
Oh, wow.
And he saw his higher self throughout his window. And it was like, he has the whole explanation in his book, Becoming Supernatural, but that kind of reminded me of it, that our higher self is always out there also guiding us, guiding other people.
Yes.
And it's just like a whole, I think, part of the soul family. And I wanted to talk about that as well. So I don't know if you want to keep going on your story, but I kind of want to interrupt and talk about, so when we reincarnate, my question is, we have a purpose on earth and after. So our higher self is working for everyone else as well. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So how does our higher self work for ourselves on this plane?
Well, okay. So this is another thing I believe. I've sort of learned, and I'll say I believe. We only take here to earth the percent of our soul that we need to achieve the purpose we want to achieve on earth.
Okay.
So that's sort of wild to get your head around. And I think even spiritual people may not think that that's the case, but that's sort of
relativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Einstein's theory of relativity is all over everything I've learned.
Yeah.
It's just, we can only relate to what we can relate to.
Right.
But if we're going to have a very difficult, tortured life, we might take 90 or 100% of our soul because that's what we need to get through this life.
Yeah.
But if we are going to have an easier life and our purpose is a little bit not as tortured, but there's a different kind of purpose or life lesson here, then we may only take, 60% of our soul.
Okay.
And part of our soul actually still stays on the other side. Again, sort of that string theory kind of thing that stays on the other side. So whether you are here or there or in both places at once, you're always, you and your higher self are always working toward your purpose. And the interesting thing is that when you come to Earth, the way we're born with these kind of dunce caps on, really, and by design, we would probably not be so focused on achieving our purpose if we knew everything about life here and there. So
we would be distracted.
We'd be so distracted. So and I use the example, like if you knew that you were going to die in your 50s at a car crash, I mean, you wouldn't leave the house from like 45 to 50, you'd be staying in house. So you would, or if you knew that your mother was going to die at 75, you'd live your whole life differently. Mm-hmm. So you would not be focused on really achieving the purpose, the reason you came here. And so we were intentionally born by design with these kind of dunce caps on, so we're blinders, so we really can't see as much as we'd love to see about before and after. But we also think, because of Earth, because of the way we are here as humans in Earth, that our purpose is very grand. Mm-hmm. And part of the media plays into that, not the media from the soul or afterlife's point of view, but just general media. Things are on a very grand scale. And so we are always thinking that our purpose or our life lesson is something huge and significant. Yeah. And in many cases, it's really a matter of just moving the needle a little bit. Okay. So it's not like our higher self has a heck of a lot to do to have us grow. It's not like we're jumping in growth. It may just be a little bit of a needle move. We may actually come here at times having nothing to do with our own soul growth, or minimal to do with it, but we're here for somebody else.
Wow.
So here we are.
Our soul family? Is that? Sorry to interrupt you. Okay.
Yeah. And so here we are thinking it's about us and growing and whatnot. And really, it may not be about us so much at all. And this is the example I like to give of that, which is so difficult as a human to, I think, accept, but I believe it to be an accurate example of what's possible. We travel in soul groups of probably 150, 200 souls. We also have that inner soul family. So your soulmate may be part of that initial maybe 10 or 20 people. And then you also have a soul group. And the soul group does travel together, really. It grows together, evolves together, travels together, moves up in versions of light together. But within that group of so many souls, you're going to have some souls that are a little bit more advanced than others, and maybe others are a little dragging behind in terms of their growth. So if you choose three things when you come to Earth. There are three things only that you choose. One of them is your purpose, what your purpose is here. The second one is sort of how you're going to be raised, the family that you're going to be born into, how you're going to be raised, just kind of your childhood, the initial where you're going, and then sort of how you're going back. So whether it's like 50s quickly, 20s quickly, 20s drawn out, 90s, with my family caring for me for 3 months, so you sort of do choose how you're headed back, whether people are going to be caretaking for you, whether you're going to die on your own, whether it's going to be an accident, whether it's going to be a long drawn out illness. So you sort of choose those three things. So back to the soul group situation, there may be some more evolved souls within a soul group that say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to take my energy and sacrifice it for the expanded growth of those lagging behind in our soul group, so that they can sort of catch up a little bit for the greater good, so that we can move.
Wow.
So somebody that is a little bit more evolved within the soul group may say, okay, how about you and me, we go back. I'll be your 5-year-old kid.
Wow.
I will die of leukemia, and you will have to live your earthly life with that horrible feeling that you will have to work through your day-to-day. I can't say work through grief, because you never really work through grief.
Yeah.
Grief is with you forever. It's just it evolves
Basic
also.
human emotion.
Yeah, but you do have to learn to live with it. So you will learn to live with your grief and live day to day, even though I was your child and you lost a child. And what that will do is that will stretch your soul. You will have to go through this difficult earthly life, so that when you get back here, you're a little bit closer to the rest of us.
Wow.
Because we're all trying to evolve. So now if you think about it from the other side, it's like, wow, what a noble thing to do. It makes sense. They're straight. But when you think about it from this side, and you think about somebody who loses their child at 5-year-old child with leukemia, you just think, you can't even get your head around it.
Yeah.
If you flip it and you think that this child soul has given this parent a gift,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about this side. It's more so about the other side. And what your soulmate and souls that in your soul group on the other side, they are more intent about you coming back and them saying, high five, you did your purpose, than they are about soothing your earthly grief.
Right. Wow.
Because they have a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's Einstein's theory of relativity. We can only relate to what we can relate to. And so we are born with blinders on, and we think how horrible it is. And I know it is horrible. Somebody loses a child. It probably couldn't get worse than that.
Yeah.
But when you open those blinders up, you may have a different perspective on it. That's all.
Right. So for instance, my aunt who lost 2 children, so they could have done that, that could have been their soul's purpose and focus here, to guide her through that and open her up. But there is validation in knowing that her next lifetime, they're going to be integrated in some way. Right?
Oh, yes.
So they're going to live a human form together, but not,
yeah,
will they know though? That's the thing.
No. Because you've probably known your soulmate before. I'm sure I knew my husband before too.
Oh, goodness.
No, you don't. No, yeah. You're intentionally born with that dunce cap on.
Yeah.
Well, when you go back to the other side,
Yes.
When you go back to the other side, you have more of a perspective. So not that you know everything, but you have more of a perspective. So that's where you can sort of do your bonding, like, oh, can you believe it? And also we're our own judge and jury. Mm-hmm. So when you go back, you decide, did you do what you meant you were here to do? And if you did not, you're going to have to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
But if you did, great, better for the whole soul group. There's another example that I have a lot of tangible examples that I write in the book, and I think people have resonated with. But another example that discussion reminded me of is, I like to say, if you were to look at a child, 5-year-old, 3-year-old child, and they're throwing a horrible temper tantrum because they want a candy bar for breakfast, they're screaming and crying, and the parent is saying, oh, listen, I'm not going to give you a candy bar for breakfast, you can have it after breakfast, maybe after lunch or whatever. And they're crying and screaming because they desperately want that candy bar now. And everybody's seen a kid melt down, so everybody can appreciate that. Every human can understand a kid melting down, because we've all seen it, whether we are parents or not. And so the thing is that you feel badly for the child who's melting down because they feel so horrible. But as an adult, you have a different perspective. So you think to yourself, this candy bar is nothing.
Yeah.
This kid's going to have 500 candy bars his whole life. He's going to have a candy bar after lunch. He's going to grow up. He's going to get a job. He's going to fall in and out of love. Like this candy bar means nothing. That's how the other side looks at us.
Right. So
When
they
we're
can see
crying
our
about
pain. They can see our pain and our grief, and they understand it. They're there for us, but they don't take an account. They just know that there's so much more beyond our grief, and they're going to always be there, not in human form. And that's what kind of gets me is I try to understand that. I mean, my soulmate could be the wind or the sun beaming down on me, and I know that I can feel him there. He could be right here, and I feel him all the time around me. But it's hard because as humans, we are so connected to the physical body. We are attached to what we can't see the soul, so we're attached to the body. And what hurts me is that I'll never see his face again. And it's just, how there's a confliction between that, the grieving process. But
it's interesting you say that, because you're obviously more evolved than many people, I think, because I find that there are people who have never actually thought about that, and they feel so happy that when they understand that their loved ones go on.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like it helps with their grief, I'll say, because their loved ones really are still here. But I now that I understand, and I felt that way years ago too. Like now that I understand they're still here, my whole perception of grief and life is different.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot of grief, because you're never going to have them in the same form you had them here.
Yeah, it's another form.
So it's a different type of grief, because people are just like clamoring to know that their loved one is still there. And when they know they're still there, they just feel so happy and satisfied, and that's wonderful. But they're really never going to have that. They're never going to have this life again. They're never going to have the relationship with the other person exactly the way it was here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. And the other thing I say about that too is grief to me, I'll say, transcends what we would call death or crossing over. Grief is that horrible feeling you feel for anything you used to have. Like I can get lost in thinking and looking at photos of when my kids were like 3-4 years old. They were so friggin' cute. I mean, it was like unbelievable. And I used to think, they're never going to remember this. I think these days are for me.
Yeah.
I think, like, I remember them, but how could they possibly remember them, right? And here I am all these years later, I could get lost in that. I can get lost. That's grief, to know that I'm never going to have that again.
Yeah.
They're never going to be in that situation again. That I can get into a very deep grief about that past situation. And the only thing that pulls me out, the only thing is that, something, I can talk to them as an adult tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that pulls me out of that grief. And grief over death of a loved one is actually the same, except there's nothing to pull you out the other end.
Yeah.
Like knowing that they're still here is wonderful. And for a lot of people, that's all they need. Mm-hmm. But then there are some more evolved souls on earth, like yourself, who feel that I can accept that they're still here, but I still sort of, want to go back to what I had, know?
Exactly.
And I can't, so, and that's why living, I can't say working through that grief, because I don't think anybody ever works through it completely, but learning to live your life with that grief, that really stretches the soul.
Yes. And I feel like that is a part of my journey, is just helping others, because I mean, the pain I went through in February to now, I mean, I still can't even wrap my head around it. But the only thing that really pulls me out of it is knowing that I'm going to be reunited. And I am reunited. He's still here. Just physically, he's not. And, it's very hard to even find any sort of light or solace, but it's the one thing that when I'm having really bad days, I know I can go and meditate. I can tap into another realm and just call him in. I can ask for a sign. I had a sign the other day. I went to call my mom on my phone or in my car. I have a little button. I was like, call mom. and it says call Jonah, and it started to call Jonah, my soulmate. And I
Oh,
was like, that is,
oh my
yeah,
gosh.
I was like, that is
Wild.
not
It's
anything
so,
close to my mom's name.
no,
But
that's so great when that kind of
yeah,
stuff happens,
yeah,
especially when you're not expecting it. Because then
right.
it's them saying to you, hey, I'm
Hello.
thinking about you,
Yeah, yeah.
you
And
know?
they tap in. You obviously know more through the frequencies and, electricity. I've had
Yeah,
weird feathers, big gray feathers appear in my dorm room. I was on the third floor. My window was closed. I don't know how it got there. Laying in
right.
the middle of my floor.
Like the pom-poms.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, those are little trinkets and little signs that show you, hey, this is, it's hard. I mean, I know that they know that we're going through the grief, but there's ways that they guide us through it. And it could be more like throwing out a little sign here and there. I think is very special. And a lot of people are closed off to it. So,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people don't really pick up on the signs, and they are trying on the other side. It's interesting sometimes when I hear about a parent that has died of who has small children. I think to myself, as horrible as that is, that parent is going to be able to help that child from the other side, actually,
mhm.
more so than they may have been able to help them
Yeah,
here,
right.
because they really will help us anytime they can,
Yeah.
anytime it doesn't interfere with our own soul growth or the
Okay.
soul growth of someone else. So
Okay.
like
Yep.
people say, well, why aren't I getting signs? Why aren't I getting signs? You may not be getting signs. You may be asking for and not getting signs because part of your path is to live without getting signs from that person. And so if that is your path and that's what you need to do to grow, your the person, the deceased loved one on the other side, is going to hold back from giving you any signs because they don't want to jeopardize your growth. Because again, they're more intent about you getting back to the other side and
Mhm.
being like, high five, you did what you were supposed to do,
Yeah.
instead of pacifying your concern here. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that you're absolutely right. People sort of discount the signs or ignore the signs or don't see the signs, and then once your eyes are open to them, it's like it's impossible not to see them.
Yeah.
They're
Exactly.
just all around all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so intricate. But the people on the other side, the souls on the other side, they really are in a position to help us, and we should just tap into that and ask them whenever we really need something. If it's something that won't interfere with our growth or the growth of another soul, and if they can do it, they will. And it
Okay.
can be a very materialistic thing like pom
Yeah.
poms or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they can and it doesn't interfere with anybody's soul growth, they will do it.
I love that. That's very nice to know.
Yeah.
um, that reminds me, you mentioned in your book about how you saw a medium. I believe this was the story, but she said to imagine your loved one giving you something, right? So you imagine them handing you an object. What was yours again?
Yeah. So this was one of my first experiences. And again, it was a very, very, um, it was a very, again, when my mother-in-law and then my deceased relatives and then my spirit guides and even my dad, right, who was still here, were walking me through understanding about the other side and the intricacies of the design of the other side. It was like one step at a time, and everything had a real impactful meaning.
Yeah.
And the message from the story that you're referring to, which I'll go through in a minute, the message is we don't have to just sort of sit around and wait for signs. We can ask for something specific.
Okay.
So at this one of the first mediums that I saw, it was at a dinner situation. And so you go to dinner and then she reads the room afterwards. And I was viewing it like a magic show. I was like, this is sort of cool. But my mother-in-law was insistent on coming through. And so, and she did, and I wouldn't even take the microphone. So the medium retreated back and then came back again and said, this woman's still here.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I was read really in a group setting though for the first time. And I was like in shock, like, how did she know this? But having said that, at the end of that dinner medium presentation, she said, okay, I want us all to end on a meditation. And she said, everybody put an object, any object, in your hand, and close your hand and close your eyes, and in your mind's eye, think of your loved one giving you that object. Think of your loved one having given you that object. So I was like sitting there, and I thought of an orange monarch butterfly. And I was like, and then I thought of my mother-in-law, since she had just come through, giving me that orange monarch butterfly. And then the medium said, now within the next 10 to 14 days, you will see this object. It will appear.
Wow.
And then I thought to myself, oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to be able to see a butterfly now because it's April. It's April of 2007. And I was like, so butterflies are more like an August thing in New York. So I'm like, I'm not going to see a butterfly. So in my mind's eye, I moved the butterfly over and I put a quarter next to it. Because I figured, let me hedge my bets, because there's no way my mom was going to be able to show me a butterfly. So now that I knew what we were doing, and I meditated on them. And then that was a Sunday evening. And then that Wednesday, I came home from work, picked up my kids at my parents' house. My parents took care of my kids when I went to work, and brought my parents and my kids both to my house, and I was going to make them dinner. So it was like the first beautiful day in very early May, end of April. So it was really sunny out. We hadn't used the backyard yet. So I was like, something, we'll grill hamburgers or steaks or something. So my parents and my two kids were in the house, and I was running back and forth to the grill, just making dinner, and to the barbecue outside. And that probably the third time that I was coming up the steps with the platter of steaks or hamburgers, I looked down and there was a quarter on the porch. And I was like, well, that's sort of weird, because I mean, I passed this the last 2 or 3 times and I didn't see this quarter before. So I was like, I guess that's sort of coincidence. And I picked up the quarter, and then to make it a little more coincidental, it was an Indiana quarter, those state quarters. Yeah. And my daughter's name is Diana. So like you saw Diana in there, and I was like, that's sort of amazing. I guess maybe one of the landscapers dropped it, or well, why didn't I see it before? I don't know, whatever. So I discounted it. And then the following Sunday, so another 4 days after that, I'm reading the newspaper, the Sunday newspaper, on the couch, and in the lifestyle section, like one of the insert sections, there was an article about Long Island summertime or something, and and about flowers and bugs of Long. And there was a half-page. The cover of it was a half-page orange monarch butterfly. Wow! And I was I still have the paper, because I was just like, oh my God. Yeah. So here I was in my mind's eye, hedging my bets. Yeah. And I got not only the orange monarch butterfly, but the quarter too. Yeah. And so that was a huge learning experience for me, because it wasn't, now I was like starting to accept the fact that my mother-in-law is really here. So now what is she conveying to me? She's actually conveying to me that I can ask for things. Mm-hmm. I don't have to just sit here and be beholden to when things happen. I can ask her. Yeah. So I tested that out further. That had been April, May, that New Year's Eve. Because New Year's Eve, my in-laws always came over the house and we hung out together. And I was like, I want my mother-in-law to come through to me on New Year's Eve. That I want that specific day, I want her to come through to me that evening. And I sort of thought about it on my way to work every day. And sure enough, New Year's Eve, she came through flying colors. Wow. And it was just like, so that learning experience was, ask for things. Yeah. Ask for specific things. And so I said that on my on the podcast that you referenced, We Don't Die. I said that I've done a couple of other interviews, and I tell people, just ask for it. And it's in my book, just ask for it. I've had the most interesting, since the book has come out, interesting things. One woman said that she asked her mother, she wanted to be very specific, she asked for a blue cameo. I want a blue cameo, Mom. Her mother died during COVID. And she was reading a magazine 10 days after she asked for it. And in the magazine, there was a half-page ad for cameo brooches. And there were 4 different color cameos. One was a blue cameo. Blue cameo is pretty strange.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't believe it. I had another woman just, I think it was a week ago, and she's from Utah. And she reached out to me and she said, I heard you on a podcast, or I read your book, one or the other, and you had said, this is a great story. I love when people tell me these stories, ask for a specific sign.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling my 10-year-old daughter, let's try it. Let's ask for a sign from my brother who died 30 years ago. So she's got a 10-year-old daughter, and her brother died 30 years prior. And she said to her daughter, what should we ask for? And her daughter said, I would like to see Finn again. And this woman she emailed me, texted me, and instant message on Facebook. She found me. She looked me up.
Yeah.
And she said, so I said to my daughter, who's Finn? And she said, Finn is a cat that I saw in the backyard last summer.
That was my cat's name.
Is that true?
We used to have Finnegan as a cat. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, well, now is it orange and white?
Orange and white.
I can't believe the story I'm going to tell you now. So this is your soulmate making sure I tell you this story.
Wow. I have like tears in my eyes.
It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
wow.
she said to her daughter, we can't ask for Finn. Finn hasn't been here for, a year. And let's just ask for a cat the same color as Finn. What colors were Finn? And the daughter said orange and white. So she said, okay, let's just ask for an orange and white cat. And so they meditated and thought for an orange and white cat. And that night, the woman said, she goes to put her garbage out, and she hears a meow behind the garbage pail.
What?
She pulls the garbage pail out. There's a little orange and white cat there. Oh, she's so excited because it's one day. She runs in to get her daughter. Her daughter runs out and says, I think it's Finn. They check the collar. It says Finn.
Oh, my goodness. What?
So,
see, that's not even a coincidence.
Well, and you have the same cat?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like unbelievable.
Finnegan, he was an orange and white cat.
And is he on the other side now?
We actually sadly had to give him to a friend because it wasn't my idea. My parents are very sweet, but
you're not in Utah,
he's not. But I mean, that's a weird coincidence,
yeah, right?
Not really, but
no, because somebody's saying hello to you. That's how it works. Somebody's saying hello to you through me.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, oh my God. But when she told me that, she emailed me that story. She goes, I just want to thank you so much. Like it opened a whole new world for her. And I know what she means. Once you realize, you don't have to just sit around like, I wonder, ask.
Yeah.
Be specific and ask.
Right.
And if they can, and if it doesn't interfere with your growth or the growth of another soul, they will.
Yeah, exactly. I asked for a sign like your story. I don't really know intuitively, and in my heart I feel as if it was a small subtle sign, but to backtrack, the first few weeks I met Jonah a long time ago, 2015. We were at a park in nature. We were all walking around having fun, and I found a spoon. And ever since then, I love spoons. I have a weird spoon collection. I don't know why. But I was with Jonah when I first found the spoon. So I took it home, like washed it. I haven't used it, but it's just like a funny memory. Mm-hmm. And so I meditated, and I said, Jonah, I really want you to give me a gold spoon. I look on Instagram the next day, and see, this is where I don't know if the correlation is existing, but the first thing I saw was a girl using a gold spoon for her breakfast. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's a very, it's not tangible, but it could very well turn into tangible.
But and even if it's not tangible, and that's the thing, I think I mentioned it too in the book and on the podcast, and you may not get it in the form you're envisioning it. Yeah. Like the orange monarch butterfly, I wasn't thinking of it being in a newspaper. I was picturing it flying around.
Flying in your hand, yeah.
Right, or flying like a real butterfly. So to see it in the paper, but I knew immediately because it was so big, it was half the paper. But people discount it because they're not getting it in the way that they envision getting it.
Yeah. Exactly.
But the other side's jumping through hoops to get
to make it all work out.
To try and get you that, and it can be something subtle, and it can be something that is in a different form than you expect. Mm-hmm. But like I think I have a friend at work who read my book, and she said she had asked her mother for a yellow bird, and show me a yellow bird, and she ended up passing a restaurant that was called the Yellow Bird.
Wow,
So
exactly.
she was envisioning a yellow bird, and instead she passed a restaurant. She drove a different way to somewhere. She passed a restaurant, the big thing says the Yellow Bird,
Yep.
and she's like, oh, I wonder if that's, I'm like, yeah, that's it.
That's it. There it
So
is.
yeah,
That
it
is
may not be the
beautiful.
way you're thinking about it, but they're right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this woman from Utah, her brother had died 30 years ago. So for 30 years, she hadn't realized that she can tap into him if she needs to.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure she spiritually has tapped into him, but it was all of a sudden this eye-opening thing where she asked for the sign. And now think about that 10-year-old. That 10-year-old's going to be incorporated in her growing up.
Oh, yeah.
She's not going to, she's not going to question signs. She's going to, just opening that door for her daughter is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I think personally, my spirituality grew when I was younger, and my grandma, she passed away. Both of mine did, and they visit me in my dream. They'll hug me, and
Oh,
it's
great.
insane. It's very vivid, but they were very spiritual. So I think they kind of cracked me open as well. I mean, I was always around them, listening to their stories. Like, we were always looking at monarch butterflies, and she was telling me that was a sign. And so at a very young age, yeah, I had that instilled.
I think that's helpful, because I think the more people there are that understand, number one, there is an afterlife, and then understand how this whole crazy universe sort of works. Not that we can always understand it all, but
yeah,
the more people that know that, incorporate it in their soul, and live their life in that manner, the better off we all are.
yeah, collectively we're uplifting everybody. The
Right.
small ounce of information that you tell somebody, your book is expanding to so many different souls, and that could just open one little door for them, and then collectively it's all unified.
Right, exactly. And I
Beautiful.
think the more of us who, and even like you through your podcast, that you elevate the energy of the world,
Mm-hmm.
the better off everybody is.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're all connected. Like, and I use that example too in the book. Like, people think, you sometimes, again, with that dunce cap on, you think that you're only connected to whatever, your friends and family, your community, but we're connected to everybody.
Yeah.
And I said, look at COVID raced through the universe, or through the world, like effortlessly,
Mm-hmm.
like no problem. And we think we're not connected.
Right.
Look how connected we are.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it was just like, how much more obvious can it be that we're all connected? If I have to, if the souls who died during COVID, which, I believe they had a pact to basically raise the awareness
Mm-hmm.
of the universe, to show that we're all connected. How can we think we're not connected after seeing how COVID is racing around the world?
Right.
It also showed us the importance of individual hugs, smiles, because now everybody's wearing masks, smiles, hugs, that closeness. So I think it really was like a war. And I think even recently, because here we are, the tail end sort of COVID, we like to think, and Colin Powell, who is like this unbelievable war hero figure,
Mm-hmm.
passes from it. I just felt like that, to me, that was like the period at the end of the sentence, like, and we don't think this is a war. This is a war.
Yeah.
And it's a war that these souls are like war veterans. These souls who have died have done it to show those of us left behind, how connected everyone is to everybody.
Right.
Like, don't think it's all about you and your family and your world and your community.
Yeah.
It's not just about your world. It's about everyone's world.
Yes. Importantly, the afterlife. Yeah. Their world is just, yeah. So what do you think about this is like a sad topic, and also selfishly, my soulmate, we believe it was suicide. So he lived in Canada, and he couldn't visit his friends and family. So what do you think happens with suicide? And obviously there's a lot of people during COVID who have taken their lives, sadly, so is that part of their mission as well? Do you think that, they're I don't know, united with the collective and the pact that have taken, that have died through
Yeah.
COVID.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a
Well,
long stream answer question.
yeah, no, that's okay. I think there's sort of two types of suicides. Well, probably more than two, but the type of suicide where somebody, no, I'm going to say three types. There's a type of suicide where somebody dies accidentally.
Yeah.
So they don't mean to kill themselves, and they end up, an overdose or something like that. They really are. I'm going to say, I hate to say mentally stable, because I don't think any of us are truly mentally stable. We're all here to grow in some way. So
Yep.
everybody's got some inner demon or life lesson that they're dealing with, everyone, no exceptions. And so what we all on the outside think of as mentally stable is almost never mentally stable. But for the most part, they're a healthy human being, mentally stable, living their life, and they go through something accidental, and it's an accident, whether it's an overdose or they are playing foolishly and they fall off the roof of a house or something. It's just totally an accidental kind of a suicide. I think that they're on the other side, they have their wherewithal. The way they had before they did this foolish act, they had their wherewithal, and they're sort of like, shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
And they want to sort of get back here quickly and finish out their life lesson, because they may not have finished their life lesson.
Because it was an accident. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just feel like, and they have their wherewithal about it. A second type of suicide is almost like that euthanasia kind of suicide, where somebody is really, they take their own life because they're so physically, not mentally, but physically ill and aging, or just physically ill.
Yeah.
And so they decide, I'm not going to burden my family with this, or I'm not going to go through this. I'm going to get out of this life earlier. I know it's a matter of a year or two anyway, or a month or two anyway. I'm going to get out early. So there's a suicide by somebody that's got their mental faculties, but feels that they're sparing themselves and sparing their loved ones from watching this decline. And I think that suicide is viewed, again, by themselves and by those on the other side in a more, I'll say, gracious or accepting way. Because chances are they've completed their life lesson here.
Okay.
Now, I will also say that if they had stuck it out, if they had not gone prematurely, and they had let their family or strangers care for them during their decline of the next months or years, they would have allowed the people caring for them the ability to grow. So they have, to some extent, robbed their other people of the ability to grow a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because caring for somebody who's dying or very ill really stretches the caretaker's soul.
Yeah.
So leaving prematurely, they sort of rob somebody of that possibility, but still they pretty much finished their life lesson here.
Okay.
And then the third type, which is the most difficult type for anybody here to accept, are those that are really, really mentally unstable, and they just feel there's no way out than killing themselves. And so again, it's an illness, so it's a mental illness, and they feel that there's no way out, and then they're going to get to the other side.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. They're going to get to the other side, and they're also going to be like, oh shit, I thought it was like, peace, or and I still have work to do and whatnot. But so they're going to get that revelation. They're still in the same place as all the rest of us. However, they're going to require, especially if there's substance abuse in there too, they're going to require more time initially on the other side to repair themselves.
Okay.
So they may be a little bit less apt to be able to reach out to those of us that need help on this side, because they're really going to be, they chances are they did not finish their life lesson here, and they probably need some soul repairing on the other side just to get back to square one. The way I read a book once, and the way it was explained in that book, which sort of stuck out to me, is if you're healthy, your soul energy is very smooth. But if you're unhealthy and you head back like a suicide like that, it's jagged. It's like your energy is jagged, and you have to actually go into some intense therapies almost on the other side to help smooth your soul out.
Wow.
And the one thing that we could ever do on this side to help people in that situation is pray.
Pray.
Pray,
Yeah.
pray, pray. Pray and thinking about them
Mhm.
helps their soul smooth out and helps their light energy up.
Okay.
So, so that's the one thing we can do. But suicide, death by suicide is the one time that people may not, I'll say may not because it's not all the time, but may not finish the purpose they came here for.
Okay.
So they're to still do that, they may have to come back.
So a lot of people have this conception or misconception that they're just in a dark space and just laying there. I don't believe that really. I don't know about you, but I feel like when it is something of a negative outcome, and like suicide, unfortunately, I don't think that they're just helpless. I think that they are growing. Yeah, they're growing still. And by us being on this earth form, praying for them, they'll just keep rising.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay. So the other side to me isn't heaven and hell. Like heaven is all, harps and angels and great things, and hell is like burning up or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really levels of light.
Right.
And only people that are stuck in that pitch dark level are really evil people.
Okay. So they need a lot of prayer, a lot of healing.
It is like, right. Now, a person who dies because of a mental illness and suicide, they're not in that down there because they're not horrible, really bad souls, right? They haven't done things that really hurt other people.
Okay.
People down there hurt other people. So they're in a situation where other souls, there are souls on the other side, like there are nurses and doctors on this side. There are souls on the other side who are caretakers.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are specific souls on the other side that are going to care for people who harm themselves here.
Okay. So that's their journey.
They're going to go back to the other side prematurely because they didn't finish their earth lesson here. But they're now going to be surrounded by caretakers to help smooth out their energy.
Wow. So I never thought of it like this.
They have people helping them get back to a place where they can now make their decision again. Do you want to head back now? Do you want to wait? Where are you in this?
Okay. So once they've decided they're ready to expand and keep, go back, once they're taken care of, they're ready to transcend again. Okay.
They actually, on the other side, there are souls that are like in the olden days, leeches that take the disease out of your body.
Yeah.
There are very, very evolved souls, like high level souls that will envelop a sad soul like that.
Wow.
They'll envelop them with their light energy and help them transform, to help them heal.
Wow. Do you know Guru? What is her name? She was very, very evolved on the earth, and she passed away. She was 42.
Oh my gosh.
She was a huge meditation teacher.
Wow.
Guru, I'll have to add her information in the show notes, and I'll send it to you. But it was a freak accident. She had a blood clot during an ankle surgery, and she was one of the most enlightened humans. So she passed away, I would say prematurely, but maybe she is on her journey to helping others transition and heal in the afterlife.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a very disabled niece who died 2 years ago.
Oh, and I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, that was very rough. And my brother and sister-in-law went to a medium, and that medium said that my niece, which I can definitely see, even though she was very disabled, is on the other side helping children who cross.
Wow.
That's part of her job, helping children cross over.
Wow.
And there are those kind of caretaking souls. They're as wonderful on the other side as they are here, and the same way we have doctors and nurses and firefighters and policemen that help us here. There are souls on the other side that do the same thing. They're caretakers. And someone who dies by suicide, they they may, on the other, one of the differences is when they head back to the other side, they're going to have more alone time than they are going back in with their family right away, because their energy has to be reshaped.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll spend some time with those kind of caretaker souls before they get reintroduced to their soul group. So so that's a difference. It's almost as if they didn't fulfill their life lesson here. They died prematurely by something they may have done, and so they go back to the other side. They do also feel like, shoot, I was thinking this, and there, I guess life goes on. This does happen, but they're not going to be reintroduced. Their soul group will come and greet them,
Mm-hmm.
but then retreat back out, and they will need some alone time with the caretakers. Some in like ICU, like
Yeah.
you need to be in the ICU, especially if there's substance abuse.
Yes.
So they basically are in that kind of soul ICU before they can get reintroduced. But no, they're not in a desperate, dark place like with evil people. But the only thing we can do on this side, because it is really pray. That's the one thing, because every time you pray, it's like a little bit of a light candle that just helps them move a little bit,
Yeah.
So and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to do what we can on this side, while the, I'll say, professional soul caretakers on the other side help.
Yes.
And that's
wow, I have tears. I just feel like that I need to start practicing that more, and lifting them up, because my whole life I learned, and I was growing up thinking that either there's a heaven and a hell, and they're just resting in peace, and that's not that's not the case. They have a lot of work to do.
They do, right? That's right.
Crazy. So I think Jonah, my soulmate, it was substance abuse for sure. So I think it was an accident. I just don't think he cared. So he just need to send him love and light, lift him up. That made me think, though, a quick question. Do you think while they're in this phase of healing on the other side, they can still tap in here and visit you? Or do you think there's a grace period where they're like, you know what, I'm not moving, I'm just healing?
So that's a great question. And I think it has to do with my thought would be that, because obviously I can't know completely, but based on what I've learned, my thought is that it depends on how much of their soul they took with them here.
Okay.
So that soul has to be repaired. But if there's still soul on the other side that's okay, they're going to tap into that part of their soul that's okay, and they're going to want to reach out to the people on earth to say, I'm still here, give me some time. But they do require, my feeling about it is, they do require more alone time and time to be cared for than a soul that didn't die that way, didn't have substance abuse. So because it's almost like they're in a detox program. So they can still reach out here intermittently, but they're not going to be as healthy and proficient, because they also have to care for themselves. But again, they're light. And so it's hard for us as humans to understand people being in many places at once, or having the ability to do different things at the same time. But because souls are light, we're light, they're light, and they're free, and their energy is more free, they can be repairing part of their energy, while another part of their energy is being used to reach out to someone on earth, or reach out to someone in their soul group that's on that side, to just say, I'm doing okay.
Wow. That is amazing. That is I feel like enlightened. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just, like I said, I'm really glad to be sharing. I think, and it's interesting, Sandra Champlain, the We Don't Die video, she was one of the first YouTube videos that I did. I've done several now, but she was one of the first I did. And she gave me a great piece of advice, because I'm not used to being in front of a camera, or this kind of a setup or anything. I'm really an accountant, and I have an accountant's job, a typical accountant's job, working with physician compensation and contracts. It's like a different kind of life.
Right.
But she gave me a great piece of advice. She said, when you write a book, your natural tendency may be not to speak about things in the book because you want people to buy the book and read the book. And, that's what. And she said, don't do that to yourself. Be in a position of conveying things that are in the book, because that entices people to say, oh, I want to know more.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me because I've always been like a sharer, a person who likes to share. And I love sharing my knowledge.
Yeah.
So it resonated with me when she said that. And I've had actually a couple of other people after I did that interview who've done great things in their life. Like a friend of mine wrote a book, and I said the same thing. Your natural tendency may be not to share everything in your book, but share it, because any way you're putting it out there, it's just, people, it interests people, and people will be more apt to, want to read the rest of your book, or want to listen to another podcast of yours, or want to get to know you, because sharing, it's it helps everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It does. It is a beautiful, amazing tool. We have social media and all these different techniques. I love it. So
I know. One of the first things that happened when I put the book out earlier this year, and of course, the way the universe works.
Yeah.
The first book was printed on my mother-in-law's birthday.
Wow.
I know, because she started the journey.
That was kismet experience, or was that planned?
Yeah. It wasn't planned.
That was amazing. That's amazing.
It's just like the way it worked out. It was like figures,
Yeah.
But
that was it.
Yeah, but one of the first things that happened, so I put this book out there, and the way social media works, I only really advertise it to my Facebook friends, of which I, have, not that many, and my LinkedIn friends, who are all my professional friends. I don't know that they all are thinking about the afterlife. And, but that's the way sort of social media, I guess, works. I had this woman from Oregon reach out to me maybe after the book was out there a month or two, and she just said, I just need to thank you for writing the book. My adult son died a year ago.
Wow.
And I'm so struggling with it. And your book allowed me an entirely different perspective. And I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm done. Because I think I wrote it for her. Because what are the chances I'm going to ever know anybody from Oregon,
Yeah.
So I'm in New York. And so it just seemed like that was the purpose, and then more people have responded similarly. And I'm like, wow, this is just great, because that's what I, one person said to me, did you have any idea your book would help so many people? And I was like, I did. That's why I stuck with it. I knew it was going to help people. I knew it was written like an accountant would write it. It's a very practical, relatable book. It's a quick read. It's only got the points about me that I needed to get my point across, but it's not just about my journey. It's about what I've learned. And I wanted to share everything I learned because it pertains to everybody. Yeah. And I wanted everybody to see a different perspective.
Right.
And so that's really why I did it. I knew it would be, for anybody that read it, it would be helpful. And so, yeah. So
love it.
Yeah, I like
it's great. Yeah. So where can people find you? You have a website, you have Instagram.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I have, my website is AnnetteMarinaccio.com. And the book is on, besides being in some local stores here on Long Island, the book is, this is the book. It's on, and this is the line that my girlfriend said to me that started it all. You believe in the afterlife, don't you?
Yeah.
That my girlfriend was like, what? You believe in the afterlife? But it's on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and Instagram. It's Annette Marinaccio on Instagram also. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
That's how people can find me.
I'll have everything linked so everyone can go quickly find you. And I put it on my Instagram too. So a lot of people have reached out already and it's great. I'd love to have you back on here. I feel like we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, sure. Anytime. Yeah. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure. A wonderful way to spend the afternoon.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And do you have any other projects coming up or any other books you're writing or any other
Yeah, that's so
podcasts?
funny. I had somebody else ask me that too. So what else can we expect? And I'm like, nah, I think I'm done. And I don't have anything else coming up because I really put everything, all my knowledge into that book. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that book is going to go on for, 50 years after I'm gone. All the
Oh, yeah.
information in there still pertains.
Yep.
So, I think right now I spend most of my discretionary time besides friends and family, basically, trying to promote the book because I
Mm-hmm.
think it's, really can help people.
Yeah.
And so, no, I don't have any other particular projects that I'm working on. I'm sort of like, that's,
Yeah.
I have my whole other healthcare work life, and
Right.
it's really more than a full-time job, and I love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
Exactly. Just taking it
but
in
thank
and
you. Yeah,
letting people heal from it. I love it.
yeah,
Beautiful. Well, you're
thank
a
you.
beautiful human for
Oh, you
sharing
too.
all of this.
You
It's
too,
great. Thank
Lexie. Yeah.
you.
Yeah. All good.
Well, thank you so much. You have anything else you want to add or
No, no, I think
no?
I think that's it. It's been a real pleasure.
It has.
I'm honor. And your excitement
Likewise.
made me more excited too. So, thank you so
Yes.
much. Yeah. This
Thank
is a great,
you.
great show.
Yes, thank you. I learned a lot. I feel like I'm very enlightened and any information that I learn and everyone else's journey expands as well. I think it's very magnetic. The way you heal is the way you're going to heal others. So it's very beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yes.
All good.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you
Okay.
have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.